bear the disproportionate burden of the climate crisis. Lacking adequate infrastructure and resources, they are particularly susceptible to the devastating impacts of extreme weather events such as hurricanes, floods, and droughts. In the aftermath of these disasters, their already precarious situation is further compounded, hindering their ability to recover and leaving them in a state of heightened vulnerability. As a result, much of the assistance directed towards these communities focus more on adaptation rather than mitigation. Adaptation strategies focus on building resilience and enhancing the capacity to cope with and recover from the adverse effects of climate change. While mitigation efforts aim to address the root cause of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, adaptation is essential for addressing the immediate impacts and safeguarding the well-being of vulnerable communities. The progression of climate justice is intricately linked to the availability of resources and support that bolster the resilience of these frontline communities. Adequate funding, technical assistance, and capacity building initiatives are essential for empowering communities to adapt to the changing climate and build more sustainable and resilient livelihoods. Moreover, ensuring that these communities have a voice in the decision-making processes and are actively involved in the development and implementation of climate adaptation strategies is crucial for fostering inclusivity and equity in the pursuit of climate justice. Ultimately, by prioritizing the needs and rights of the most vulnerable, we can strive towards a more just and sustainable future. So our agenda for today, we'll hear from 3 distinguished Commonwealth organizations: the Commonwealth Foundation, the Association of Commonwealth Universities, and the Commonwealth Secretariat. Within their realms, they offer invaluable resources to member nations, their communities. From the Association of Commonwealth Universities, we delve into the research and educational opportunities extended. The Commonwealth Foundation extends its reach with climate resilient projects and a commitment to knowledge sharing. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth Secretariat diligently pursues its mission to empower the 56 Commonwealth members, of which 33 are small states, by facilitating access to financing, fostering resilience, and amplifying their voices on the global stage, which once again align with the overarching goals of climate justice. So without any further hesitations, I will now introduce our panel for today. So our first panelist is Madiha Hussain. Madiha is a program officer at the Commonwealth Foundation. Madiha supports the advocacy and creative team on delivering online events and in-person forums such that address global issues, including the climate crisis, facilitating civil society engagement in policy spaces, nurturing the civil society community through various digital platforms, as well as supporting on the Foundation's advocacy and outreach work. Prior to this, she has worked on projects in the interfaith and legal sectors. She holds a master's degree in human rights from University College London and a BA in politics from Queen Mary University London. Welcome, Madiha. Our second speaker for today is Ms. Beata Knight. She is the head of programs at the Association of Commonwealth Universities. Beata leads a portfolio of research and education capacity strengthening programs that aim to support equitable access to higher education, foster international research collaboration and mobility, and facilitate action research in climate change adoption. Beata has a research background in developmental cell biology and is an experienced research program management professional with over 20 years of practical knowledge and expertise in the higher education sector and specialist skills in global partnership development. Welcome. Our last speaker for today is Mr. Unikrishnan Divakaran Nair, and he is the head of climate change at the Commonwealth Secretariat, where he plays a pivotal role in steering the climate change program. His leadership is marked by a strong emphasis on key initiatives such as the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, the utilization of geospatial data for climate action, the Commonwealth Climate and Gender Program, and the implementation of the Commonwealth Living Lands Charter. His responsibilities cover 56 small and vulnerable Commonwealth countries and he currently leads a dynamic 23-member technical advisor team. This team actively champions the implementation of climate action targets across Commonwealth members countries in the Asia, Pacific, Africa, and Caribbean regions. So welcome to all our panelists today. So we have we have about 10 minutes for Q&A after each presentation. But yeah, I just want to ask Madiha to kick us off. So I'll stop sharing now.
Great, thank you, Kelsey. We'll also start sharing my screen. Cool. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, great. Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is an honour to join you all here today at this important discussion on Commonwealth collaboration on climate change. My name is Madiha Hussain, and I am a Programme Officer in the Advocacy and Creative Programme at the Commonwealth Foundation. And before I begin, I just want to thank the Ramphal Institute for inviting me to speak on this panel today. The Institute has a huge presence in the Commonwealth, and we really value the work that you do. So by way of an introduction, I'll provide a brief background to the Commonwealth Foundation and specifically our mission and our mandate. So as many of you will know, we are one of the 3 intergovernmental pillars of the Commonwealth Foundation, and we've been given an explicit mandate by member states to advance the interests of Commonwealth civil society. And our mission is really threefold: to support the active and constructive participation of Commonwealth citizens in all aspects of their governance, to nurture the growth of vibrant and free civil societies in all Commonwealth countries, and perhaps most importantly, to advance the principles and ideals of the Commonwealth, which are enshrined in the Commonwealth Charter. So our focus areas. So the Commonwealth Foundation is currently focusing our work on 3 areas that we have assessed to be of critical importance for the Commonwealth's 2.5 billion citizens. And these are health justice, climate justice, and freedom of expression. And our thematic focus areas really serve as pillars of a broader framework for sustainable development, which are grounded in the principles of social justice, human rights, and democratic governance. And this aligns us closely with the Sustainable Development Goals and also anchors us to the spirit of the Commonwealth Charter. And across all our work, we really seek to amplify the voices of marginalised communities by paying close attention to gender equality, small and vulnerable states, and young people. And over the past few years, we've really come to realise that these 3 areas of health justice, climate justice, and freedom of expression are not isolated silos, but rather the issues really intersect and overlap in quite profound ways that really highlights the importance of us working together to address some of these most complex and urgent challenges that our world faces today. So special relevance to today's discussion is the nexus between health justice and climate justice. And that connection is undeniable. You know, all around us, we can see how the impacts of climate change are really posing significant threats to public health and well-being. And the Foundation's emphasis on climate justice rather than, for example, just on climate really reflects our appreciation for the fact that the worst effects of climate change are disproportionately being felt by many of the Commonwealth's small and vulnerable states who bear little or no historical responsibility for what's happening to them and to the planet at large. And focusing on climate justice also really compels us to acknowledge existing inequities. So, for example, women across the Commonwealth face unequal access to resources, to land ownership, and to decision-making power, which leaves them especially vulnerable. Now, as you may know, the Foundation administers a grants programme that each year delivers over £1 million in financial assistance to civil society organisations that are working at the front lines of our areas of focus. And in relation to climate justice, we are supporting innovative projects that are working to influence policy and decision making. So in this presentation, I will share just a snapshot of some of our recent grant highlights. One project that was administered in Pakistan, where a grant from the foundation enabled the Sustainable Social Development Organization to train 78 young people on citizen journalism, leadership, and environmental issues to promote sustainable behaviors and to advocate for policy reform. And as a result of this project, 3 youth networks on climate change have been created at universities in the Punjab province. Another project in Bangladesh by the organization Badabon Sango, they received support from the foundation to improve conditions for women fisherfolk by ensuring their inclusion in decision-making on climate policy. So through this project, 7 consultation workshops were held between 2022 and 2024, and these were attended by 156 fisherfolk and 27 local government officials. And the fisherfolk were able to learn about their rights and entitlements using identification cards, and they reported an enhanced awareness of gender-based discrimination and the impacts of climate change on women's health. And government officials also reported that they better appreciated the participation of women in the fishery sector and were in favour of facilitating their registration and the issuing of identification cards as a result of this project. And these measures have really helped to increase their security and access to support. Similarly, another project, the Environmental Protection and Conservation Organization in Mauritius, is also supporting fishing communities in coastal areas that are adversely affected by climate change and recent environmental disasters with a grant from the foundation. So between 2022 and 2024, 438 artisanal fishers in 9 coastal villages were given information about their rights and relevant policies through the use of creative approaches, including animated videos. And the training really helped to raise awareness of the often overlooked role of women in the fishing sector, and the importance of equality was also highlighted. Some of our other past grants have supported civil society organizations and local governments to build their capacity to integrate climate planning in local services and governance, as well as to shape policy responses to climate change-induced displacement and to address the priorities of local communities. And we're also supporting individuals and organizations to use creative expression for social change through our creative grants. So in 2023, our regional focus for the creative grants was on the Pacific. And our grant really helped One Small Bag Theatre in Vanuatu to support climate change advocacy through a series of musical workshops with local bands to produce, perform, and distribute songs that highlighted the loss of biodiversity on the land. So in addition to our projects on the ground, the Foundation is also facilitating knowledge exchange and dialogue through initiatives such as our flagship online critical conversation series. And this platform really provides a space for civil society to engage in meaningful discussions, to share insights, and to co-create innovative solutions to complex environmental challenges. And we have held numerous online conversations to coincide with major global events in the climate agenda, such as the Conference of Parties. So in 2022, we held a series of conversations both in the lead up to and following COP27. And these critical conversations focused on issues including just energy transitions, climate reparations, as well as exploring the power and the importance of the arts to the global conversation on climate change. And during these online discussions, we engaged a diverse range of participants, including policymakers, civil society representatives, academics, youth leaders, and Indigenous communities, just to name a few. Participants were able to share their best practices in their regions, share lessons learned, and also some of the practical insights learned from their respective contexts as well. But more importantly, these conversations have really provided a platform to amplify the voices of marginalized communities and their perspectives, including from small island developing states and vulnerable communities, to really push forward their demands on critical issues such as loss and damage. So by centering their experiences and priorities, we've really ensured that these discussions, these online conversations, are rooted in equity, justice, and solidarity. We're also working hard to bring civil society into the room where policies are being developed and decisions are being made. So from the COP process to Commonwealth meetings, we really see a vital role for civil society to play in holding governments to account and to drive real change. So in August 2023, we held our critical conversations roundtable called Gender, Climate Change and Health, How Can We Do Better for Women and Girls? And this roundtable convened 450 civil society experts and advocates. And together they developed a set of practical recommendations, which were then presented at the Commonwealth Women's Affairs Ministers meeting in the Bahamas, as you can see in the picture on the slide. And these recommendations were very well received by ministers and were endorsed in the official communique as well, which was a really great result and really helped to confirm the critical importance that civil society voices play in shaping policy responses to climate change. And building on that momentum, our September 2023 roundtable, which was on global finance for people and planet, brought together almost 200 advocates for debt and climate justice, financial experts, and civil society leaders. And the discussions focused on how the impacts of the climate crisis on the Commonwealth's frontline communities can be addressed through reform of the global financial architecture. And a set of very specific and practical recommendations were developed through this roundtable, which then informed the background papers that were shared with officials at the Finance Ministers meeting in October 2023. And this was actually the first time that the foundation was able to bring the perspectives of civil society directly to finance ministers. And looking ahead, we are committed to working closely with the Secretariat to explore how sustained engagement in future meetings can be secured to ensure that civil society remains a key part of decision-making processes on climate. So during the 27th UN Conference of Parties, COP27 in Egypt, the Foundation took the lead in bringing the voices of the Commonwealth's frontline communities, frontline countries to a global audience. And we collaborated with the government of Vanuatu to hold 2 in-person events to draw attention to the ways in which some of the Commonwealth's smallest and most vulnerable states are using international law as a tool to advocate for climate justice. And the image on the screen is from the first event, which was a high-level dialogue where we had 3 leaders from the Commonwealth, as well as the Secretary General and a young climate activist from Kenya speaking on our panel. The Foundation also recognises the indispensable role that the media plays in advocating for climate justice. So to that end, we supported the participation of journalists from small and vulnerable states at COP28 in November last year. And this initiative really highlights the critical nexus between freedom of expression and climate justice, so our 2 big focus areas, because journalists really are those essential agents of transparency and accountability. And they play a really crucial role in shaping narratives, publicizing information, and also catalyzing action on pressing issues such as the climate crisis. And it also matters who is in the room on the government side as well. So the Foundation has supported young climate negotiators from the Commonwealth's small and climate vulnerable states who were part of the Loss and Damage collaboration to engage in the Africa Climate Summit in Kenya in September last year. And 2 of those negotiators also attended COP28 with Foundation support and made significant contributions towards the adoption of the Loss and Damage Fund, as well as the inclusion of loss and damage under the global stocktake and the new collective quantified goal on climate finance. And this support has really helped to contribute to the skills development of these young negotiators. Now, as we look ahead, the Foundation is committed to continuing our efforts to advance climate justice within the Commonwealth. And one significant event on our agenda this year is the Commonwealth People's Forum in October, which is being held in Samoa, which is one of the Commonwealth's smallest and most vulnerable member states. So against the backdrop of Samoa's vulnerability to climate change impacts, this year's forum really offers an opportunity to elevate the voices of those on the front line of climate change, to really highlight the challenges that are being faced by small island nations, and to also underscore the urgent need for collective action. And the Foundation is continuing to champion climate justice at the People's Forum, with resilience being a major theme of this year's Head of Government meeting. And we are working closely with our civil society partners in Samoa to hold a Pacific-wide photography competition, which focuses again on climate change. And this will provide a unique opportunity to really showcase the beauty and resilience of the challenges of Commonwealth countries in the region. And our goal is really to harness the power of arts and storytelling to really deepen our understanding of the climate crisis and to inspire action. So to close, I just want to go back to the title of this webinar and emphasize the importance of collaboration within and beyond the Commonwealth in addressing the urgent challenges of climate change. More than anything, the Commonwealth is a family of nations, and we must support one another to really amplify our collective voice and work together to build a more sustainable and resilient world. We all have a responsibility to protect our planet and to really safeguard the well-being of future generations. And this is only possible through that shared commitment to the climate justice cause. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Madiha. That was a great presentation. And you're right, the Commonwealth is a family of nations, and that's why the collaboration is so important. And the work that the Commonwealth Foundation is doing is also super important, focusing on marginalized communities, especially women and communities of color. And also amplifying the voices of the youth, because they're going to be the ones to take on all of the action in this decade. Thank you very much. Now we will be moving on to Beata from the Association of Commonwealth Universities.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for the kind introductory words, and thank you also for asking me to contribute to this very important webinar today. And I hope I can share my screen effectively. Can you see this?
Yes, you're all good.
Is it in presentation mode as well?
Yes, it is now.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Yes, so thank you very much for inviting me to the webinar today. It was really interesting to hear about the activities of the Commonwealth Foundation. I can see a lot of synergies, and we should be really working together very closely. And it's good to be together in this forum today. I'm also looking forward to the ComSec presentation later on. My name is Beate Neid. I'm the head of programs at the Association of Commonwealth Universities, and it's really a pleasure to talk about the activities we undertake to contribute to the Commonwealth collaboration on climate change. Just quickly an introduction of our membership organization. We are a university association, so our members are exclusively universities from across the Commonwealth. We were established in 1913, and we have at the moment around 400 member universities from 42 Commonwealth countries. You can see a map. I know it's not very access friendly, but we have members in Europe, in West Africa, in South Africa, East Africa, in Australia, the Pacific, South Asia, East Asia, and Caribbean and Americas. We are the voice for higher education in the Commonwealth. We convene and connect universities and individuals within those with other partners, and we provide resources, programs, and educational opportunities to strengthen the capacity of universities and the individuals within them. And we really want to provide and support a strong and connected higher education community that works across borders and boundaries to build a fairer, more sustainable world. And as climate change is a large and a global challenge at the moment, is one of our focus areas. Just to give you an overview of our strategic priorities, we champion the power of higher education to improve lives, and particularly the contribution to sustainable development goals. We support the long-term vitality of universities through capacity strengthening programs. We would like to engage and connect universities across borders, promote collaboration among them, with the focus on equitable partnerships particularly. And we deliver educational opportunities that make a positive and lasting difference. One priority for us is also to uphold the ACU's reputation for excellence and to demonstrate its impact. So a large part of our work is policy and advocacy. We are an accredited body, the only accredited body for higher education within the Commonwealth. So we are very focused on championing the critical contribution of higher education to sustainable development. As part of our advocacy work, and we outline policy priorities for higher education and also help to shape the agenda on behalf of our members across the Commonwealth. We do this through, similar to the Commonwealth Foundation, to attending and contributing to high policy level meetings like the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting coming up in Samoa, but also the conference, particularly important for us, the conference for education ministers, Commonwealth education ministers. And just to give you an example, we are supporting Commonwealth ministers to enact the recommendations from the 2022 Commonwealth Education Minister meeting by establishing a higher education task force across our memberships. It's made up of vice chancellors across our memberships, considering the recommendation areas that were identified in 2022, particularly focused on research capacity and research ecosystems, higher education funding and financing, looking at the digital device, readiness and adaptability, but also gender equity, access and inclusion to higher education, and then a focus on employability, skills and job creation. Climate change is an underpinning issue across all of those. And we will work with our Vice Chancellor task force to put in practical recommendations in place, which we then take to the CCEM, which will take place in 2024 in London this year. We also, so a main goal for us is to support collaboration with 4 researchers across our membership and also professional service staff. We have a number of networks which we support collaboration within this. And one of our networks, we have 5 of those at the moment. One of our networks is focused on climate resilience, which has academic members of staff across 32 countries and 252 members. We try to convene those members across topic areas, give a forum to exchange best practice and through webinar series and things like this. And yeah, we're very much focused on climate resilience within that network. But a lot of our work is supported through programs we manage to support international collaboration and education, particularly focused on research and scholarships. We are running large scholarships for the Commonwealth Scholarships Commission in the UK and the Queen Elizabeth Commonwealth Scholarships. Both are part of the wider Commonwealth Scholarship and Fellowship Plan. We are running an Ocean Country Partnership Program scholarship. And here we are very focused across those scholarships. We are very focused on supporting education and supporting research capacity, which will contribute to tackling larger challenges like climate change, but also support international collaboration between scholars that participate in those programs, but also the mentors that are involved. And have large alumni programs to support those collaborations in the longer term. We do have grants we give out as part of our own activities, so the Climate Resilience Network grant, and we also run externally funded programs like the Commonwealth Futures Climate Research Cohort, supported by the British Council, or the Agri-Food Systems Transformation Researcher Network, which we are about to establish, supported by the Food and Agriculture Organization. And just to give a few more information on the scholarships, we are managing on behalf of the Commonwealth Education Ministers and Commonwealth Scholarship and Fellowship Plan, which was established in 1959. So far, over 31,000 alumni studied in the UK. Over 650 new scholars and fellows are on award each year, and coming new on board each year, but every year we are supporting around 1,600 scholars. The Commonwealth Scholarship Commission is a non-departmental body under the FCDO, which is the UK Foreign Government Department. The program itself is run by 4 commissioners, which are appointed by the FCDO, and we are providing the secretariat and also the alumni program, and in-country support is provided by the British Council. So these programs, there are actually 7 programs as part of the Commonwealth Scholarship Program. These are PhD scholarships, master scholarships, but also professional fellowships. And what we particularly like within the programs are the split-side scholarships, where there is scholars are based in Commonwealth countries and only spent a year in the UK. So really supporting capacity strengthening in country, but also international collaboration. And just to focus, how does it sit with our climate change focus today? All those Commonwealth scholarships have a sustainable development focus. Climate change goal 13 is a very important one. We also have a focus on widening participation, equity, and access to those scholarships, and really focus on this during the selection of scholars. And we also have time-limited programs each year. And you can see in 2022-23, there was, for instance, one on clean energy, air, and oceans. This year, it's a focus on entrepreneurship. And there are strong alumni engagement strategy as part of that to support that international collaboration in the longer term. The Queen Elizabeth Scholarship is also funded, so the CSFP, but under its endowment fund, so it's not supported by under the endowment fund, which is owned by and for Commonwealth governments. This scholarship scheme is supporting fully funded 2 years master's degrees, but the focus here, the hosting is done by universities in low and middle income Commonwealth countries. And there are 2 deadlines per year, and the current one closes in May 2024. Here you can see selection of countries where CSC scholars are currently hosted. And we think no other international programs give students the opportunity to study in as many locations across the Commonwealth. And again, subject areas are set by the hosting countries, and there are a lot of scholarships that are particularly focused around climate change. And here are just a few examples. So there's an MSc in disaster management at the University of Dhaka in Nigeria. There's an MSc in Natural Resource Management hosted by the University Zanzibar in Tanzania. I mentioned the Ocean Country scholarship programs, Ocean Country Partnership Program scholarships earlier. They are funded through the UK's Blue Planet Fund. They are very much focused on to address marine environmental challenges, in particular focus country. Climate change, again, here is playing a really big role in this subject area. These scholarships are 1 to 2 year fully funded scholarships based at universities in Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, Mozambique, Senegal, Ghana, Belize, and in the Pacific region. Research topics here again are informed by national government priorities, and in order to help cohort formation across those 8 countries and across the subject areas, we manage an additional capacity strengthening program for all OCPP scholars this year, which is around 100, to generate cohesion across the program, but also to particular focus on research to action, capacity to develop research to action projects. So we train scholars on how to effectively engage with policymakers, how to communicate to the general public, and to inform your research by challenges that are found in the real world, right from early on, and how do you co-create research in the subject areas. I mentioned earlier that we also give out grants funded through our ACU internal grants as part of our climate resilience network. These are small grants of around £2,500. They go to ACU, can go to ACU academic and professional staff, and the projects have to focus on enhancing the climate resilience of universities themselves, or enhancing the university's contribution to the resilience of communities, business, and government. Here's an example of one of the grants we gave out to Tracy Ann Hyman at the University of the West Indies. She's a PhD student there, and has developed an app that helps to work with local communities to look at climate resilience, which will then contribute to her PhD. I also mentioned that in addition to those scholarships we are running, we are focusing on capacity strengthening of researchers in the area of climate change, particularly in the area of research to action. And we are currently running a 3-year project funded by the British Council that focuses on climate research to action, climate research, and strengthening the capacity of early career researchers across 10 countries. And the focus in this year is around 5 themes, which are supported by an academic theme lead. So this is water security in a changing world, climate law at national level, urban adaptation and resilience, adapting to flooding and coastal change, and digital governance in marginalized communities. And what is happening as part of the program is that 18 fellows are taking part in a training program that is very much focused on how do you co-create research with policymakers, with local communities. How do you find the right communities? How do you interact with these communities? And how do you develop programs that are informed by challenges in the real world? And how do you then develop the proposal? And how do you implement the proposal together with those key stakeholders? And how do you develop research questions together with these communities? And so the fellows undertook a training program, and now they are developed co-created research projects, and we are just in the phase to select those projects and hope to fund around 5 to 6, which are then undertaken in the next 6 months. And we also, through this program and also through all our scholarships, we support the engagement with the UNFCCC COP process. So we are running at COP conferences, we are running joint panel discussion around particular topics that came out of the research undertaken by our scholars, and work in collaborations there to bring the topics to policymakers and make them aware of the latest research findings. And then just the last example I wanted to focus on is a pilot we are working on with the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. This is a pilot program that focuses on developing a global research network to address complex and multifaceted issues underpinning agri-food systems transformation, very much affected by climate change. Through this network, we hope to leverage South-South and triangular cooperation in agri-food system research to stimulate learning, problem-solving, and co-production of knowledge. And in February 2024, we had a first stakeholder engagement meeting, which was attended by researchers across our network, but also beyond. And as part of that stakeholder engagement meeting, we identified themes the research network should focus on. I've listed them here, and as you can see, agri-food systems and climate change will be one of them. And underpinning topics across it all is inequity in agri-food system, research approaches, and capacity strengthening. So we will be holding further stakeholder consultations in 2024 with agri-food system researchers across the Commonwealth to refine the mission, vision, and activities associated with ResNet, and then go out and jointly fundraise with the FAO to really develop a network that has meaningful activities for participating researchers in the coming years. This is just a snapshot of the activities we do, and I hope it's been interesting to listen to, and hopefully there are some stimulating ideas. And yeah, please get in contact, and please ask questions at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beata. There's a lot of capacity strengthening happening there, which is really great work. I think it's important, again, education plays into the discussion of just transitions, and that's exactly what we need with climate justice as the world is changing and we're trying to transition and pivot to a more sustainable future. So thank you very much. Okay, and now I welcome our last speaker, Mr. Unikrishnan from the Commonwealth Secretariat.
Thank you. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, Ramphal Institute, for this invitation and to be part of this the series of climate justice program presentations, and of course on a very important topic, which is Commonwealth collaboration on climate change, actually. So I think this time is sufficient enough to talk more about what we do in the Secretariat, especially in the space of climate action for the 56 Commonwealth member countries. Just to give an overview of the Secretariat's role, the Commonwealth Climate Change Program focuses on strengthening the resilience of the Commonwealth countries to the negative impacts of climate change and supporting mitigation efforts It facilitates capacity development of member countries to access public and private climate finance for climate mitigation and adaptation. And it also involves international policies, mechanisms, and rules to be more responsive to the development needs of the countries vulnerable to climate. It's a very dynamic space, and we try our best to keep abreast with the requirements of the countries and to see to it that the current mandates provide that support. So under the climate change program of the Secretariat, we have 6 main program areas. The first and foremost is the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, which is our flagship initiative. And then we have the Commonwealth Call to Action on Living Lands, which was approved in the last CHOGM, if some of you have noted. The Commonwealth NDC program. So this is a very forward-looking program to support member countries in fast-tracking implementation of their nationally determined contributions. And then we have the Commonwealth Geospatial program, again, a program that focuses on using technology, especially the geospatial data and information for climate decisions. And low carbon, climate resilient health sector is one of the major and emerging areas for adaptation and mitigation planning. And last but not least, the integration of gender and youth concerns into climate action. It's basically around how to bring more inclusivity into the whole work stream. The Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub operationalized in late 2016 as a Commonwealth Heads of Government mandate in 2015. And this is basically one of our major and flagship initiatives. So the uniqueness of the Climate Finance Access Hub lies in the fact that it's a very clearly country-driven mechanism, which is quite in line with the needs and priorities of the client countries. And we also here follow an embedded action. It's not a short-term process, but we do embed climate finance advisors into the member country ministries for a long-term basis with dedicated and specialized terms of reference that meets the needs of the countries. And it also follow a balanced approach of human and institutional capacity building. Which includes a great deal of project structuring and innovative financing instruments. And of course, we follow a lot of partnership and especially institutional arrangements to support this. And there's a large interconnected network. The central hub of the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub is hosted with the government of Mauritius, and we have regional hubs for the African, Caribbean, and the Asia Pacific region based in different regional institutions. And then we do have advisors deployed in member countries to support the process of access to finance. What are the major areas of support that we provide? These are in terms of project pipeline development, technical and policy support, climate finance readiness. I think that's an important area for many of our small states. Human and institutional capacity development, knowledge management, learning and sharing, and gender and youth mainstreaming. I think we heard a lot of these areas of work from both Beate and Madiha, from the foundation as well as the ACU, and there's a lot of scope for engagement in this front and collaboration. So the current deployment of the Commonwealth Climate Finance Advisors span across region, as I explained. So we have advisors currently. We have served more than 21 countries in the Commonwealth, and majority of which are small island developing states and small states and LDCs. The value for money for the Commonwealth Secretariat of doing this particular work is from since 2015, from a mere $8.5 million worth of financial assistance to the Secretariat, we have already delivered to the hands of member countries US dollar 327.55 million worth of projects, which is an absolute positive value for money proposal. And we have so far supported around 80 projects. And in addition to that, what is not quantified is also the capacity building initiatives, which is, I think, a very important area where we have trained more than 2,500 officials in around 15 member countries through the training programs, which is basically around project development. And this is now being institutionalized. I'll come to that a bit later. So this is basically one of the most successful initiatives, and we are moving forward in terms of project proposals at scale and speed to benefit the member countries, including attempts to access the new and innovative lines of financing like the IMF Resilience and Sustainability Trust Fund, and also the upcoming Loss and Damage Fund that the World Bank is housing. In this journey, we've been supported and funded by many of our member countries, including Australia, UK, Mauritius, Canada, and others. And of course, we do have a lot of institutional partners in the region, including many UN and other multilateral organizations. So this is the kind of a landscape of partnership that we have that's enabling us not to duplicate the work, but to join hands and deliver more with the support and knowledge and the acumen of the partner institutions. The second program that I would like to highlight is the engagement with the NDC partnership, which is another multi-country body that supports the process of taking the nationally determined contributions forward. So we've worked with member countries in the Africa, in the Caribbean, as well as in the Asian region in terms of taking multiple aspects of the nationally determined contributions forward. And we are currently working with countries like Maldives in terms of providing technical assistance for project development. So this engagement is a very fruitful engagement that has set many policy standards in the countries, especially in terms of institutionalizing climate action at country level, and also to set up the economic parameters for gauging the cost of climate financing, etc., and of course MRV systems. And I think the example in Antigua and Barbuda of setting up of a gender responsive blended finance window for one of their national and regional funds is a notable example of how the Commonwealth Secretariat is supporting in setting standards in the region for financing of the most marginalized communities. Knowledge management, of course, is an important area of work of the Climate Finance Access Hub. And as I've explained, the e-learning modules that we have released, basically that supports our member countries to register and learn from the experiences. Last 8 to 9 years of experience of the Climate Finance Access Hub is very rich, and it's basically something which we have documented, and the UNFCCC and other regional institutions like the African Development Bank, the NDC Partnership, the Africa NDC Hub, etc. They have already adopted these tools and platforms, and of course we are progressing with new and innovative ways. So I think notable among the trainings that we deliver in member countries is the climate negotiation training, as we know that this is one of the major factors for the kind of biases or maybe the inefficiencies in terms of decision making when it comes to the negotiation table. So we've seen that there's a great demand from the member countries in terms of how do we engage in supporting the officials in enhancing their capabilities to deliver in the negotiation tables for in the UN processes. So that's also something which we are progressing very well. And I know that there are now a lot of civil society organizations who are taking up the role of implementers of projects. So there's a lot of scope for capacity building, joining hands with the Commonwealth Foundation to build capacities of many of the civil society organizations in not only delivering projects at the ground, but also around MRV, around transparency and others. Moving forward, the Commonwealth Living Lands Charter, this was adopted at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali in Rwanda in 2022. And the charter's main aim is to coordinate synergistic implementation of the key performance indicators of the 3 Rio conventions. So it's basically to bridge the gap in terms of coordinated implementation at both national, international, and regional level. And also, it's a great opportunity for Commonwealth to play a leadership role in coordination of the UN-led processes. And here, when I say Commonwealth, it definitely includes the accredited organizations, including the Association of Commonwealth Universities, Commonwealth Foundations, etc., were like explicitly mentioned in the charter. I think it's also a great opportunity, like how we've worked on the ocean space for the fellowships. So similarly, we're planning to have fellowships and internships program in the Commonwealth Living Lands Charter as well, moving forward. The implementation of the Living Lands follow a kind of a 5x5 approach that will look into the 5 important thematic areas that contributes to the emissions. And also, these are the thematic areas where there is a lot of need for resilience building, from the resilient agriculture for food security to sustainable green cover and biodiversity, to soil and water conservation and management, to livestock rearing and animal husbandry, and of course, a very important topic of indigenous people and climate resilient development. So here, definitely these implementation strategies, 5 implementation strategies are going to support member countries in taking the various agreed agreements under the 3 Rio Conventions forward, which includes the Paris Agreement, the land degradation neutrality targets, and of course, biodiversity targets. The next initiative that I would like to highlight here is the use of geospatial data for climate action. So the first phase of the program, called the Common Sensing Project, was implemented in the 3 Pacific Island countries of Fiji, Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu. So here we've supported the member countries in using geospatial data for decision making. It covered mainly elements of development of climate finance proposals, evidence-based decision making, baseline, and references. So in terms of proposals, we have supported more than 10 to 25 million US dollar worth of projects in Fiji and Solomon Islands, and also evidence-based decision making, several apps, the applications we developed for the government. Notable among them is the application that was developed for the government of Fiji, which was adopted and released by the Deputy Prime Minister just before COP. Basically helps the government of Fiji in making decisions around expansion of agricultural area in the wake of climate extremes and disasters. And of course, as we all know, that baselining is very important for projects to progress, especially in sectors which are highly vulnerable. And we did cover thematic areas like climate information, food security, disaster risk, and climate finance. And of course, the Commonwealth role through the Climate Finance Access Hub was to support and use this information and data for accessing projects and project financing. So I think notable example, so this is a $5.76 million project, which is on strengthening the adaptive capacity of coastal communities of Fiji to climate change through nature-based seawalls. And similarly, we also did projects in Solomon Islands on e-mobility, which is basically to establish electric mobility corridors in these countries. Moving on, youth and climate change, again, a very prominent area of work that the Secretariat is leading. It is basically, again, operating under many themes, but one of the most prominent ones is, of course, like how do we deliver finance, especially for the young and entrepreneurial group of climate leaders, and of course, working with multiple stakeholders to see how decision-making can happen and how this engagement can lead to innovative ideas and experiences that can accelerate climate action. So here we work very closely with the dedicated UN and as well as Commonwealth youth groups, including the Commonwealth Youth Climate Network, the Commonwealth Youth and of course the other regional institutions, and definitely the UN Youth Constituency Young Go. And of course, when we talk about project development, there are many examples where we have supported the youth engagement when it comes to climate action, especially in countries like Eswatini, Zambia, and Namibia. So also, like if you look at some of the countries, like for example, Vanuatu, we engaged in mentoring program with Climate Action Network in Vanuatu to build the capacities of young people. And of course, in St. Lucia, also we've organized in the Caribbean for green entrepreneurship initiatives. And at COP28, we released an important work with the UNFCCC's youth constituency, Young Go, basically on availability of climate finance for youth. I think I'll highly recommend to review that, which is available in our website, which speaks about how we can engage with the MDBs and also with the private sector and others in terms of in increasing the access to finance for youth, which is again a patchy area, because you know the credit worthiness of these entrepreneurial groups are still not evolved vis-a-vis the need for climate resilient technologies to evolve. The gender and climate change, again, is a very, very important area of work that the climate change program is pursuing, which is basically with a high focus on policies, funding proposals, and of course, capacity building, actually. So this is a very important work that we have done with the member countries in terms of evaluating the nationally determined contributions, in terms of how much of integration of gender actions has happened into the NDCs. And then based on that analysis, we came up with a best practice guidance that in terms of actions, what should the member countries do to integrate gender considerations into the NDCs moving forward. And especially, we will be reviewing this closely when the new NDCs are submitted in February 2025, and also in the run-up to the next global stocktake. In terms of projects, we have supported gender mainstreaming across key areas, especially in terms of project development. We have examples from the Caribbean as well as the African region, into like very important areas like the food environment, wash nexus, for example, and also as I indicated around finance, we have supported in the development of the gender responsive blended financing window under the regional and national funds for the governments of Antigua and Barbuda and for the overall OACS region. Similarly, we also supported Jamaica in their readiness proposal in terms of facilitating a gender responsive approach for climate adaptation and mitigation. And this actually led to the Jamaican government coming up with the gender and climate strategy and action plan. So this is, again, a very classical example how capacity building or readiness projects lead to institutionalization of certain aspects within the governments. So I've talked about this report. My last pillar that we're working on is on climate and health. On the 7th of February, the Commonwealth Secretariat and the World Health Organization signed a memorandum of understanding to strengthen collaboration in 7 priority areas, and of which climate action and climate and health is one of the strongest areas. So we, as we know, the direct threats of climate change and human health, and also the kind of escalation of vector-borne diseases, and also outbreaks of the other non-communicable diseases, and definitely the reason, and there's also reason to be concerned in terms of the lack of good quality proposals from the health sector in these multilateral funding windows. So we did some early work around health and climate action. I think a prominent example is a 1.6 million grant from GCF, a first of its kind, to fund the strengthening adaptation planning in the civil society organization, disabled people organization to climate finance. And I'm sure Commonwealth Foundation will be keen in looking into this particular project, which is an evolving and which is currently being implemented. This was the first proposal to support disabled people's organization to enhance their climate resilience. So would be a classical case to review to see how this is progressing. And of course, around early action, so we've engaged at COP27 and COP28 with the WHO processes, and also we're part of the financing working group of the WHO, and definitely under the Climate Finance Access Hub, we are going to recruit Commonwealth Health, a climate finance health advisor with a singular purpose of developing proposals at scale. So these are some of the areas. I'll say around 6 areas where the Commonwealth Secretariat is actively engaging with our member countries, and of course linking it to today's theme, which is basically to bring more climate justice. So of course, as the introductory speaker introduced, like we have 33 small island state, of which like small states, of which around 25 are small islands, were highly under risk from climate change. Like, for example, we have advisors in countries like Tuvalu and Nauru with a population of 10,000 or more, where climate change is not an issue. It's basically an existential problem for them. So obviously, those are very critical countries where every learning from other parts of the world will matter, and every support that we provide matters in terms of moving the adaptability forward, even though it's very hard for such countries to take the process forward when a single extreme event is going to have an impact or 200% impact on their GDPs, and then of course to deal with the debt issues. So obviously all these efforts that the Commonwealth is offering to our member countries, or all the support that we are offering to the member countries, is basically to reduce that gap and to enhance the performance of the countries to be more resilient and more adapted, and of course to play a leading role in the international climate finance market, if I could put it, like from the carbon markets to the ecosystem-based service delivery market. So obviously the attempt is to reduce the gap, and of course, like what we are doing currently is not even a drop in the ocean, but definitely with instruments like Climate Finance Access Hub and the initiatives around gender and climate, we are looking at making the change happen at whatever scale that we could do. And of course, since Commonwealth, 56 member countries as a body has a huge scope to replicate some of the successful model, and that is where our confidence is. And so with these few words, I would like to conclude my presentation. Once again, thanks Ramphal Institute for this opportunity, and hope to answer some questions. And definitely, I think thanks for the earlier presenters. There's a lot of scope for engagement and collaboration. So we look forward to more bilateral discussions in this front. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Unikrishnan. Definitely, the ComSec is covering a wide scope. I mean, you've worked with so many Commonwealth member nations. Is there any that you feel that you've not gotten to yet and hope to collaborate with in the future?
Yeah, I think there are many countries, like, as I said, it's a demand-driven process. So we have got many countries from where we have gotten requests, but definitely our response to those requests are based on availability of funds, availability of human resources, and of course, the internal capacities. So we do have many countries who are in pipeline, and we our pursuit is always to engage with funding partners to go into these territories and continue the support.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to invite our other two panelists back, just for any questions that we might have. I think what we might be eager to know is the collaboration between the three Commonwealth organizations that we have here. Is this something that you've done in the past?
Yes.
Anyone can take it.
No, please, Beate, please.
Just
please
to say,
ahead.
we worked on the Blue Charter together with ComSec, and surprise, ran a fellowship scheme under the Blue Charter, and supported the action group with research we supported under a fellowship scheme, as an example. But I'm sure we've done other things in the past as well.
So we have just started the engagement with the Association of Commonwealth Universities around the Living Lands Charter. So I think we have a template already available from the Blue Charter, so it'll be easy to replicate. So we are reaching there in the next financial year, actually, to take the fellowship program forward.
It's great to hear.
Yeah, especially because both Madiha and yourself talked about this nexus between climate change and public health as well. So there's definitely probably some room there for collaboration. Beata, I wanted to ask a question about, I think you said something about your research programs, and what you try to do is take the research to policymakers and people in UNFCCC. Is there any feedback from that progresses onward to the next step?
So the program I mentioned is a capacity strengthening program, because we find that a lot of funders are requiring researchers to work with policy makers and stakeholders, but it's not an easy thing to do when you come out of your PhD. It's not necessarily supported at universities. So this is a program for early academic researchers to really provide them with the tools and with the skills to engage with practitioners and policymakers, and then also give them a practical program to do this. But we are just at the moment, it's not an easy thing. So we are at this stage where we received applications that follow the training program, and what we can see is a lot of the programs have involved policymakers or practitioners. They've been involved in co-creating research questions, and once we fund this project, we will see how this it's a long path to influence policy, but we hope we can develop some case studies for these programs of work, to these research proposals, to really show evidence of impact of that work.
That would be definitely very interesting to hear. And like you said, policy takes a while, I know. And then Madiha, I also just wanted to ask, you talked a little bit about, bringing arts into the climate change space. And this is also interesting because a lot of the time when you're talking in the climate space, there's certain words that you might need to use to engage different types of audiences. And what type of audience do you feel like you're engaging when you take this approach?
Yeah, so kind of through our, we've kind of brought together our two strands of work, which is the advocacy and creative, and we've kind of merged them into sort of one program now in our kind of this year in 2024. And I think it's really engaged a kind of whole segment of creative. So, we've got artists, storytellers, we've got this kind of ongoing program. So we've got the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, we've got an online literary magazine. And, those that have engaged in those kind of more creative processes are now, we're thinking, how do we bring them into this advocacy side of our work? And, we've been kind of holding events. We had one sort of in that series of conversations that I mentioned during COP27. We had one around the power of arts and climate justice. And, how do we use storytelling? How do we use creative practice? How do we use creative practitioners in this space? And we've seen it at COP, how creative practitioners have utilized, murals and poetry to really convey these messages. And I think it just sheds a different light on these issues. People can resonate a lot more with that poetry and that storytelling, which kind of evokes those emotions, and it just brings a human side to these issues. So I think it's really engaging, a whole new segment of civil society that might otherwise not have been kind of meaningfully engaged in these processes before.
Right. And I do think invoking emotions is very important when we're talking about climate justice, because it also overlaps with a lot of human rights issues that we face. So I'll just open up. If anybody has a question, you can drop it in the chat, or if you want to just come on mic now. Okay. Okay, someone has written something in the chat.
I think they just wrote that they were leaving or had to leave. So,
okay.
What about the developing the awareness to the youngest of children and older youth in development? Sue, Dale.
Yeah, no, I haven't left. I've got to leave.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Sue.
That's why the typing was a bit funny. My husband is agitating because we should be leaving. No, I mean, it was wonderful. But our work, particularly our emphasis in CASME at the moment, is on the very young children and the older children before they become youths. You've got to start there as well. So we would really welcome development. I'm now only honorary at University College London. I'm a very long time teacher. I started in 1968. I'm a biologist in the beginning. And that's the work we're trying to do. And we're a very small organisation. But it was absolutely wonderful to hear what you're doing. But it just struck me that is what you didn't mention. And I suppose you can't do everything. But I'm just highlighting that there are some of us who are really anxious that we start developing the understanding in communities with the parents and the children. And from research I've done in the past, that's where people learn things and remember. It's not the formal schooling, which has a different agenda. So that's what I was going to say. So I'd love to hear from some of you. But I have got to rush off because we had an appointment locally. Right, sorry.
No, isn't the big problem.
Thank you, Susan. Okay. Well, we are on time unless anybody wants to feedback on that very quickly.
Maybe a quick input, because as Secretariat under our Commonwealth Sustainable Energy Transition Agenda, we do come up with education materials, especially booklets in terms of how this just transition and also the energy use and energy efficiency related matters for young children. So that's something which and also in the upcoming Commonwealth Education Ministers meeting, we will have a session which will deal with what are the kind of aspects around education that ideally need to be added on, not only in the curriculum, but also in the kind of emission reductions around the educational systems, and of course the other resilient building strategies. So it's definitely something which is there as part of the academic what do you call inputs, but there is more that we are planning to do around the education ministers meeting I think in the upcoming months.
Can I just say that would be wonderful? I don't know about those resources. The advertising of such things amongst the Commonwealth is so poor. It has not reached us because we're in formal education, but I shall be around at the Commonwealth Education Ministers Conference. So if you could just send me a link, that would be absolutely wonderful, and I can pass it on to all our people.
I'm gonna send the link right away in this chat, so you can just pick it up from here. Actually,
well, if I can manage it, or I might end up emailing you.
yeah,
right.
sure.
We can also include it in the email that we'll send out tomorrow.
Would you?
After this
That would be
webinar.
wonderful. And I
Yeah.
am talking about, I'm working at the moment on 0 to 3-year-olds, and they're developing of STEM, which nobody's done before, and we've got to start right there. Anyway, sorry, I must dash. I'm terribly sorry.
Thank you, Susan, for your input, and thank you, Mr. Unicrishan. So I just want to close today's webinar by reiterating the overarching theme, which is collaboration is super important. We always talk about climate finance, but it's important that we highlight also capacity building projects and education, because those are what will also be serving civil society, which is super important. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you especially to our 3 esteemed panelists. And we hope that you can join our next webinar, which happens on Tuesday. And that will be discussing climate resiliency and economic development in small island developing states. So
Is it
thank you
Tuesday?
again.
Kelsey, sorry. Is it Tuesday
Yes,
or Thursday?
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
April 16th. Yes.
All right. Thanks.